and welcome to the Happier Life podcast. I'm Clare Deacon, and I'm really glad you're here today, particularly if the title of this one stopped you in your tracks a little, because I want to talk about something that is genuinely hard to explain to other people, let alone yourself. Nothing is actually wrong, life is ticking along. The job is there, family is there, the diary is full, and yet there's this weight, this pressure without a source. This feeling that you're carrying far more than you can see, and that you are one small thing away from it all becoming a bit too much. And then because everything looks fine from the outside, you feel confused by your own experience. You may tell yourself to get a grip. You compare yourself to people who have it harder and feel guilty for struggling. So you carry on. I want to talk about what is actually going on when you feel this way, because it's quite often not what you think. So let me be specific, because it's in the detail is where you get to be seen and feel heard. The overwhelm I'm describing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's more like a pressure from the inside, like you're a glass that has been filling slowly for a long time and nobody has noticed because you keep finding ways to hold the water in. You're fine in public, you handle things, you get through the days. But privately, in the evenings or in the car between things, or at 3 in the morning when your brain won't stop, you notice you're not really okay. You're managing rather than living. Some describe a kind of emotional rawness. Things that wouldn't normally touch them are landing too hard. Small frustrations feel enormous. You find yourself crying with no clear reason or snapping at people you love and then feeling guilty. And the guilt adds into the pile itself. So, if any of that has just landed somewhere familiar in your body, stay with that for a second, because that recognition is your signal. So, that's what we're going to be talking about today. And here's what I want you to hear clearly: you're not struggling because something is wrong with you. You're struggling because your nervous system has been carrying more than it has been given credit for, and that has a cost to it. The most important thing to understand about this kind of overwhelm is that it is almost never about today. It's about the accumulation. Your nervous system doesn't process emotional load like a to-do list where you tick something off and it's done. It works more like water in the soil. What doesn't get properly absorbed stays. And on a day when nothing is particularly wrong, the levels reaches the surface. This is what I call cumulative load, the daily absorbing of others' needs, the managing of everyone's emotional experience while quietly setting your own one to the side. The constant low level monitoring is everyone okay? Does everything look right? Am I doing enough? That monitoring is invisible labour. It doesn't show up on a schedule. Nobody acknowledges it. But your nervous system is running that schedule constantly. And Nervous systems that are running constantly don't get restored. They stay in a low level activation state. And that over time looks like exhaustion, emotional rawness, and persistent feeling of not quite coping with no obvious reason why. So, when was the last time you were genuinely not responsible for anyone? I don't mean just alone, but actually, truly unmonitoring, running a mental list, just present in your own body without the watching. For a lot of women, that question is genuinely hard to answer, and that's not a small thing. I want to name something that rarely gets said directly because I think saying it clearly is one of the most useful things I can offer. A lot of the overwhelm that women carry is the result of being emotionally responsible for too many people for too long. Not because the people in your life are terrible, but because you became the one who holds the emotional weather of the household, the one who adjusts herself to keep the peace, the one who notices when someone is struggling before they say, and quietly does something about it before it becomes a problem. That's an enormous workload, and it almost never gets named or acknowledged because it happens in the body and not on a whiteboard and not on a list. And it builds a particular kind of tiredness that many women feel uncomfortable admitting to because there isn't that direct alignment towards the source. Not resentment towards specific people necessarily, more kind of a deep bone level exhaustion with being the one who absorbs everything, with being the one whose needs come last, with performing retainers whilst running on empty. How often do you say, "How are you?" "Well, I'm fine," when really you're just about hanging on. If that landed somewhere and you feel it, I want you to sit with it for a moment rather than to push past it. The fact that it landed with you is information. Let me tell you what I see on the other side of this, because I think hope matters. And I've seen this shift. I've seen the shift happen up close. I've experienced it myself. When you genuinely understand what your overwhelm is actually made of, not the surface version, but the real version, something starts to change. The overwhelm gets a shape, and things with a shape can be worked with. You start to notice the difference between what you are genuinely responsible for and what you've been carrying that was never really yours in the first place. That distinction alone is bigger than it sounds. Because when you can see the difference you can start making different choices about what you pick up and what you put down. And you begin to recognize the early signals, the specific feeling in your body that tells you the load is getting too heavy before you hit the point of overwhelm. That recognition gives you something precious. It gives you the chance to respond to yourself before you've run out of everything. The version of life on the other side of this isn't a life without challenge or responsibility. It's a life where you're actually in it rather than managing it from behind the glass, where you wake up with something in the reserves, where the small things land lightly because the baseline isn't already so full. That is available to you. And it starts with taking the overwhelm seriously rather than pushing through it. If something in today's episode, something that I have said here, has landed with you, please don't push it back down. You don't have to figure out what it means alone. Supper and a Chat is a free conversation with me, no agenda and no pressure, just a chat to see whether working together might be the right next step for you. You can find out more and book your session at happier.co.uk. You can find the link in the show notes. So I will leave you with that thought, and I will see you next Wednesday. Take care of yourself.